Well, once again, the Zags are bringing a top 10 recruit to Spokane to watch them take on St. Mary's. Why landing Isiah Harwell is critical for Mark Few and the Bulldogs, coming up on today's Locked On Zags podcast.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use that promo code LockedOnCollege, and you'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Well, we are going to skip our player preview series for today. We're going to come back to them later next week as well. But for right now, we're going to lament the Gonzaga women's basketball team not making the AP top 25, although they were very close. We're also going to talk about a visit that they had from a comedy legend. We're also going to discuss Drew Timme's future after he was cut by the Milwaukee Bucks, whether Chet Holmgren could potentially win the Rookie of the Year award over Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson. Jam-packed show, but we are kicking things off with a recruiting update. Isiah Harwell, a five-star prospect in the class of 2025, has set his first official visit of his recruiting career, and it's in Spokane. Harwell is going to visit Gonzaga in February of 2024 over the February 3rd weekend when Gonzaga will be hosting the Gaels of St. Mary's. That Kennel is going to be popping off, and it better be. If you're listening to this and you're going to be at that game, you're going to be in the McCarthy Athletic Center, you better be loud. You better be cheering for Isiah, get a chant started, whatever it may be, because this young man can ball. It would be a tremendous addition for Gonzaga to land Isiah Harwell. Harwell is currently the 7th-ranked prospect in the 2025 recruiting class. That's at 24/7 Sports. He is a 6'6" combo guard currently playing at Wasatch Academy in Mount Pleasant, Utah. This is the same high school that Nolan Hickman transferred to. Hickman began his high school career in Seattle area, ended up playing at Wasatch in Utah, was, of course, initially a Kentucky commit, ended up decommitting from Kentucky, coming to Gonzaga, now entering his junior year with the Bulldogs. Harwell is from Pocatello, Idaho, so he has got regional ties to the Spokane Inland Northwest area. He is playing at the same high school as Nolan Hickman, likely creating some kind of connection there, whether through the coaching staff, through Hickman directly, whatever it may be. This is all promising signs for Gonzaga. The connections are already huge. Of course, we know Mark Few, like any good college basketball coach and recruiter, is leveraging those connections as much as they possibly can. But also, scheduling your first official visit to Spokane is huge. Getting that first official visit is significant. It also helps to get the last official visit. We know that sometimes the last team to come in can really wow somebody, and some recency bias can play a factor there. But for Gonzaga, this is a very good indication that Harwell is really intrigued by Gonzaga. This is a school that is very high on his list right now. Things can change. It is a long ways away. We're a long ways away from even his visit happening. But it is a promising sign for Gonzaga that they already have these connections in place and that they could potentially land a really significant player in that class. Again, 6'6" combo guard. He's big. He's strong. He can do a lot of different things with the basketball. College and the NBA are kind of moving towards those bigger guards. That seems to be a really valuable spot. And so having somebody like him with his size and his frame is insanely valuable for Gonzaga. Harwell is also considering a reclass to 2024. This was an article from Travis Branham at 24/7 Sports. It was pretty 50-50. It sounded like he was asked about it. He basically said, yeah, it's something we're considering. We've talked about it, but we're not really sure yet. So I don't know how seriously he is considering it. It is interesting to note, though, because if Gonzaga does land a commitment, and they do not land a commitment from Zoom Diallo, it would make some sense for them to try to push Harwell, to potentially reclass and join the 2024 class. Now, it's also worth pointing out that every single one of Gonzaga's guards on the current roster could return next year. Every one of them. Dusty Stromer's probably back. Nolan Hickman's probably back for his senior year. Ryan Nembhard's probably back for his senior year as well. Luka Krinovich is a freshman. Like, there is no shortage of guards expected to be on Gonzaga's roster in 2024-25. So it also might make sense for the Zags to not encourage Harwell to reclassify. And if he wanted to stay in that 2025 class, come in after Nembhard's likely gone, after Hickman's likely gone. Again, we don't know for sure what the situations will be in those spots, but it does make sense to potentially have Harwell be that 2025 target for them. There's a quote from Harwell again in the same article by Travis Branham at 24/7 Sports talking about Gonzaga. I'm just going to read it here. He says, just being able to see what it's like to be there, what the experience is, how the team is, how they play in the environment, really. That's what he's looking forward to, folks. So again, bring the house down if you are at that game against St. Mary's in February. He continues, they're all cool guys. They all love talking to me, and I love talking to them. It's the relationship building, so being able to talk to them is cool. Now, Gonzaga is far from the only school in the mix here. And again, they landed that first official visit, which is fantastic. But Harwell did say in the same article that he is in the process of getting an official visit taken care of with Alabama. So Nate Oates is in the mix. Gonzaga and Alabama have been on a similar recruiting trail, targeting a lot of similar guys the last couple of years. So that's going to be another potential battle between those two programs brewing right here for Isiah Harwell. The other schools he mentioned, a laundry list of very, very premier college basketball programs: Texas, Kentucky, North Carolina, Baylor, and Houston. Now, there are a handful of other schools in the mix. Those are just the ones that he specifically mentioned, which I think is more notable than perhaps what other lists or other recruiting services might have. Currently, On3, another recruiting service that has pretty consistent projections up on their site, they're giving Gonzaga a 56% chance. I'm going to take this with a massive grain of salt, not because I do not trust the people at On3, but because it's guesswork at this. He hasn't even taken a single official visit. They are seeing that Gonzaga is getting the first visit. They are seeing that Gonzaga has been involved with him in the past. They're seeing the same things we're seeing. He's connected to the high school. He's connected to Nolan Hickman. He's from the Idaho area. It makes sense to project Gonzaga as the winner right now, but we are a long ways away from this thing being done. Harwell is Gonzaga's second known target in the 2025 class outside of Nick Kamenia. We talked about Nick Kamenia a handful of times on this podcast. You everyday listeners have certainly heard me talk about him. If you have not, go check back in your feed. If you're on YouTube, there's an entire channel just dedicated to recruiting updates for Gonzaga. It's a playlist, I should say, so you can go find it in there. But Kamenia is a 4-star prospect. He's 52nd nationally right now. In that recruiting class per 24/7 Sports, 6'7", kind of combo 3-4 hybrid from Harvard Westlake High School, same high school as Trent Perry, a target for Gonzaga in the 2024 class who recently committed to USC. The odds right now feel pretty good in Gonzaga's favor that Kamenia is going to commit to Spokane, giving them their first future recruit, future commit. They have nobody in 2024. Kamenia would be their first known commit in 2025, but that's because the Zags are going after the big boys. Not only are they going after Harwell, who again is number 7 in that 2025 class, they're still in on Zoom Diallo and Asa Newell. Now, Newell sounds like he's unlikely to come to Gonzaga. The latest reports we have heard there are that Georgia and Alabama are the 2 top teams and that kind of everybody else is out of the running. He did list Gonzaga in his top 4, and I would never say never in that situation, but it does seem like he is probably not going to be a Zag, at least not coming out of high school. Zoom Diallo is currently taking a visit to Arizona, but he has visited Gonzaga. He has been a target for them for many, many years from Curtis High School in Tacoma, Washington. It sounds like USC is probably out on Zoom Diallo. They were one of his top 6 because they landed Trent Perry, but Florida State and Washington are also still in the mix for Zoom. I think it's probably going to come down to Gonzaga and Arizona. Going to be a few Lloyd battle right there, but Gonzaga's in on 3 top 10 prospects, 2 in that 2024 class in Zoom and Asa, and then of course Harwell here for the 2025 class. So good to see Mark Few and the staff still going after some of the premier talent in high school basketball, and it feels like they're off to a very good start in the recruitment of Isiah Harwell, at least up to this point. I'm going to switch gears here, talk about the women's basketball team, because Lisa Fortier's team felt like they were snubbed. They should have probably been a top 25 team coming into the season. We're going to talk about why they were not on that list. We're also going to talk about a comedy legend who visited the team. If you missed this story, you're going to want to hear it. It's a very fun one. All of that coming up after a word from today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Folks, Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to huge payouts, like their Taco Tuesday deal. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks will discount select player projections up to 25% to provide you with even more value. And with PrizePicks' reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second half, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. This is unprecedented in the daily fantasy space. PrizePicks is super, super easy to use, folks. You just pick 2 or more players and you choose more or less with the given stat. So if you see Patrick Mahomes, 165 passing yards, you either hit more or yes. Spoiler alert, Patrick Mahomes has not had less than 160 passing yards since like October of 2019. So if that's the bet, if that's your Taco Tuesday discount, you're smashing yes on that and getting yourself paid. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use that promo code lockedoncollege and you'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use promo code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, folks, welcome back. Still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags, and we're still talking all Gonzaga basketball here. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Shout out to those everyday listeners on YouTube as well. Very much appreciated. We're moving on here to talk about Lisa Fortier and the women's basketball team because the women's basketball AP preseason poll came out earlier this week. I think it came out on Tuesday, maybe came out on Wednesday. I'm not sure. And Gonzaga was not on it. They did receive votes. They received 15 total votes, which if you unofficially, that would count them as 31st because there was 5 other schools who received more votes than them, but who are not in the top 25. So in theory, the AP voters value Gonzaga right now as the 31st best team in the country, but not in that top 25. Gonzaga was picked to win the WCC in their conference preseason poll. That is not a surprise in any capacity because they ran through the WCC last year, 17-1 in conference play. That only loss was that devastating loss to Santa Clara. Of course, they did lose in the WCC championship game as well to Portland, but this is a team that is going to likely run through the WCC again because they return everybody. Basically everybody. Michaela Williams transfers to Cal, but everybody else is back in the mix. The Trung twins are back. Vonnie Ejim is back. Brenna Maxwell is back. Eliza Hollingsworth's back. Callie Stokes is back. Like this whole team is back. Bree Salenbine, who was hurt last year. She was the top rated player that Gonzaga has ever landed in terms of prospect rankings. She missed all of last year with an ACL injury. Now she's back. So you basically have an entire return to your roster from the team last year with minus 1 key player, and you get somebody like Salenbine back in the mix. You also add Naya Ajuku, who transfers from Utah. This team's going to be humming all season long. It's a fantastic program. And having said all that, I do understand why they were not in the top 25. I would have put them there. Am I biased? Yeah, probably a little bit. But and I think, I mean, you see the voters like having them 31st, like it's far from the only people who thought that they deserved to be in the top 25. They're right in that conversation. But this team, again, we don't have KenPom, which we don't have these computer programs that can help run some of this advanced data for women's basketball. So we have to rely on good old-fashioned wins and losses. We have to rely on strength of schedule, and we use net a lot of the time. And for women's basketball, Gonzaga finished 49th in the net last year. Now, they were 44th before their loss in the NCAA tournament. They, of course, were in an 8-9 matchup with Ole Miss and ended up losing to Ole Miss, which was a tough loss for them. Ole Miss then went ahead and beat Stanford and advanced to the Sweet 16. But again, even before that loss, they were still 44th. So they weren't a top 25 team by net. And this is a team that went 28-5 last year. 17-1 in the regular season for conference play. They have wins over Louisville, who was 6th at the time of the victory. They had a win over Tennessee, who was 23rd at the time of the victory. But Louisville and Tennessee kind of fell off a little bit, which hurt Gonzaga in the net rankings, which was unfortunate. There's not anything they could do to control that. The Lady Zags also had losses to Stanford and Marquette. Both those losses aged decently well. Those were two very solid teams. But the loss to Santa Clara really hurt them because the WCC was a bad conference last year. I know people who follow the men's team kind of continue to bag on the WCC on the men's side, but it's worth acknowledging that like 15 years ago, this is kind of the kind of stuff that might have happened to the men's team because a few losses in conference play or even a few close wins or not having the marquee non-conference schedule would have been really devastating for the men's team 10, 15, certainly 20 years ago. But the WCC has improved enough that that's not the case. That has not happened on the women's side. And now they lose BYU. BYU was consistently the second best team in the WCC. Portland had themselves a nice little run. They had a bunch of players transfer out this offseason. I'm not very confident that they will be back at that level that they were last year when they won the WCC championship and earned themselves a bid in March Madness. So you got a weak WCC conference. You got a team that lost their last 2 games last year for Gonzaga, finished barely inside the top 50. I can understand why there's a little bit of trepidation in having them in that top 25. However, Lisa Fortier she's got a fix. She's a problem solver, and she went out and solved this problem because this team has a gauntlet in their non-conference schedule. They're playing 4 ranked teams in the preseason. That includes 24th ranked Washington State on the road in Pullman, number 25 ranked Mississippi State. They're also playing Louisville, who is now 17th heading into this season, and they're playing Stanford as they typically do. Stanford is starting the season ranked 15th. So 4 ranked teams. They also have 2 more Pac-12 games against Arizona and Cal, 2 teams expected to be very solid. They have 2 solid Mountain West opponents in Wyoming and New Mexico, and they're also playing South Dakota State, which is a mid-major darling, a very, very solid squad, the Jackrabbits there for on the women's basketball side. So this is a very good non-conference schedule. It's the best that Lisa Fortier can do because they can't control that BYU left the WCC. They can't control that Portland and some of those other programs had mass exoduses of transfers this offseason. Like, the WCC is probably not going to be a great conference on the women's basketball side. So Fortier's team, they got to do everything that they can. And they might need a little bit of luck. And perhaps they got their good luck charm in Adam Sandler. For those of you who missed this story, Adam Sandler, for the first time, is visiting Spokane. He played a concert. He played a show, a live comedy show on Monday at the Spokane Arena. And prior to his show, he went to women's basketball practice, hung out with the team, hung out with Coach Lisa Fortier. Fortier also went to his show at the arena, and it was all over social media. You can find it on the women's basketball Instagram page. You can find it on the Locked On Zags Instagram page as well. Really cool situation. We know Adam Sandler is a big basketball fan. For those of you who have followed his career, who watch his movies, he's a huge basketball fan. He plays pickup basketball all the time. He loves playing with fans. He likes kind of walking up to basketball courts when he sees them and getting a chance to hoop with people. He's a big basketball diehard. We also know that there's at least some level of respect between him and Gonzaga as well. If you've seen his new-ish Netflix movie, Hustle, it's been out for a couple of years now. It's a basketball movie. It's kind of a love letter to basketball in a sense. It's a fun movie. There's some good cameos in it. Kenny Smith's in it. And there's mention of Gonzaga. Kenny Smith mentions Gonzaga specifically. So Gonzaga gets some love in this movie. Adam Sandler takes a trip to Spokane, brings his comedy show out there, and gets a chance to go check out the Kennel, meet with Coach Fortier. The video is fantastic. All the players on the team are very excited to see him. It's a really fun thing that happened. And love him or hate him, I get that some people don't like Adam Sandler's movies. That's fine. His movies are definitely not for everybody. But I think it was very cool that he did this. I think it was very cool that he went and saw the women's team. I just think that's a cool opportunity for them, cool exposure for the team, for the brand, and just fun. I mean, just a fun thing that happened. And hey, look, last year, the Washington State women's team, for those who missed this, they went on their rallying cry throughout the year was Shania Twain. They played Shania Twain songs before games. They played I Feel Like a Woman. They had this tremendous run. They went on a deep run in the Pac-12 tournament, good run in March Madness. Shania Twain retweeted them, talked to them. They had all this exposure experience from it. So look, why not try the same thing? Maybe the second Inland Northwest women's basketball program out there can get some kind of celebrity exposure the way that Washington State did with Shania Twain. And now Adam Sandler will be the good luck charm here for Lisa Fortier's team because they got a great schedule. They got a great team, but they might need a little bit of luck to find themselves in that top 25 early in the season, especially throughout the relatively weak WCC conference play. We're going to pivot gears once again to close out the show, talking about Drew Timme, who was unfortunately waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. What does that mean for him? We're going to talk about that as well as Chet Holmgren's Rookie of the Year chances, all coming up after a word from today's sponsor, Jace Medical. With storm shortages, pandemics, and supply chain issues, we all need to be prepared now more than ever. And everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. And that's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have that medication in your hands. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. So don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my promo code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Doctor created, doctor recommended, Jace Medical. All right, folks, closing out the show today, switching over to talking about Zags in the NBA. And we got some unfortunate news coming out of Milwaukee. Drew Timme waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. This happened on Wednesday morning, as we're recording this right now on Wednesday afternoon. The report is that he has been waived, which means that NBA teams have 48 hours to put a claim in on Drew Timme. Any team that claims him would then absorb his two-way contract. They would have him on their roster, would basically get to evaluate whether they want to keep him on a two-way deal, whether they want to move him up to an actual NBA roster spot, whether they want to also waive him and hope he passes through waivers. Because if he does pass through waivers, either this time or the next time, he can then be added to that team's G League affiliate. For Milwaukee, if that happens, he will be playing for the Wisconsin Herd in the G League. This has always kind of been the expectation for Drew, is that he's going to spend the majority of his season in the G League. Whether it's with Milwaukee, whether another team takes a shot on him for the rest of the preseason in the hopes that, hey, maybe if we take him, he'll play well in the preseason. We can either find a roster spot for him or waive him and have him on our G League team instead of in Milwaukee. I could see that potentially happening, but I think the more likely scenario is unfortunately that Drew Timme will go unclaimed and he will end up playing in the G League with the Wisconsin Herd. He signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Bucks right after the NBA draft. He played the Exhibit 10 contract, basically just guarantees your spot for Summer League. He played in Summer League with the Bucks, averaged 4.3 points and 2.5 rebounds in those 4 games. He then signed a two-way contract and got invited to that training camp preseason with the team, but he only played in 2 games during Milwaukee's NBA preseason. He only took 3 shots. He only made 1 of them, which was granted a go-ahead shot with about 30 seconds left. It ended up resulting in a win for the Milwaukee Bucks. So very exciting first bucket for Drew Timme in that NBA preseason. But at this point, without a lot of tape outside of his college tape, I kind of think that NBA teams are not going to give him an opportunity right now. So I think he's going to end up being in Wisconsin with the Herd on their G League team. And I suspect that he is going to dominate in the G League, assuming he gets the requisite playing time, assuming he's a starter for them and playing big minutes. I think he is going to be one of the best players in the G League. And it's kind of reminiscent of players he's been compared to in the past who have had big runs in the G League. Luka Garza is a great example. Garza was a better outside shooter than Timme, but was a player of the year, a fantastic college player at Iowa. And he was one of the best players in the G League when he was there. G League All-Star, MVP candidate for that league. I think Drew Timme is capable of being that kind of guy. But I also think there's a chance he'll get NBA looks, similar to the fact that Luka Garza has gotten those NBA looks. So I don't think it's over for Drew Timme. This isn't a death sentence. This isn't I guess we'll see him in Europe sentence. This is just hey, he's not going to make Milwaukee's roster directly out of preseason, which was never particularly likely. But he's not going to get one of those two-way spots either, which is a contract that where you split time between the G League and the NBA. You're guaranteed at least a certain amount of time on an NBA bench. Not guaranteed playing time, just guaranteed that you're going to be on the bench. And he did not get one of those spots. Maybe another team will give him a chance. There are teams out there that still have two-way spots available. There are teams out there that could certainly use more size in the front court. But as we've litigated on this podcast before, unfortunately, the NBA just does not value the skills that Drew Timme has and places more emphasis on the skills that Drew Timme does not have. His struggles to defend in space, his not consistent outside shooting limits him in ways that they wouldn't have 25 years ago. If in 1998, Drew Timme would have probably been, I don't even think he would have spent 4 years at Gonzaga. He would have been drafted before that because they valued that low post presence, his footwork, his ability to score through contact. All the things that he's so good at are just not things that NBA teams are really doing these days. And so it's not a huge shock to see him not make it, even though I think he's certainly capable. I wonder if teams will give him a look. I think there are certainly some teams that might be willing to put a waiver on him, consider him for a two-way spot for the next week or so. And if it doesn't work and they say, hey, we're going to pass you through waivers again, and if you pass through, we're going to keep you in our G League team. I think that's possible. I'd love to see Portland do it. I have not hidden that I'm a Portland Trailblazers fan on this podcast. I think that'd be fun. They certainly have their front court more taken care of now after trading Damian Lillard and acquiring DeAndre Ayton from Phoenix and Robert Williams from the Suns, from the Celtics. But I do think that having a fourth big man, having a guy like Timmy in the G League affiliate would be very, very fun. Cool to see Drew Timme back in the Child Center were that to happen. But again, at this point, we're 48 hours away, or 42 hours away as I'm recording this, probably about 24 hours away for you listening, to finding out whether he gets claimed or whether he ends up sticking in Wisconsin with the Herd. Last topic here for today. Chet Holmgren is just dominating in the NBA preseason. He's played 3 preseason games. He's played about 21 minutes per game. So he's not playing big minutes yet, but in those 21 minutes per night, he's averaging 18.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per game. And he is crazy efficient. 62% from the field, 55.6% from 3. Granted, that is 5 of 9, but still very effective there, about 74% from the free throw line as well. For you folks who've been watching him or who've been tracking other people watching him on Reddit or Twitter or wherever else, people are starting to figure it out. They're starting to realize, like, oh man, this guy is really good. And it's not flashy. It can be sometimes, but typically it's kind of quiet, it's subdued, and he just kills you softly in some ways. It's such a unique style. He moves uniquely, but he gets it done. And the question now is whether he's a legitimate candidate for Rookie of the Year, because everybody's talking about Victor Wembanyama, and there's a very legitimate reason that people are talking about Victor Wembanyama. He looks like an absolute alien. His size, his skill set, his strength, it's unbelievable what he is capable of doing. But Chet has a little bit more experience because he spent last year on an NBA sideline. He's been working out with NBA teams and coaches and general managers and all that. And I just think that he's in a better situation to cater to his skill set. Having said that, he's not going to put up the same numbers as Victor in my estimation, simply because Victor is the guy for his team, assuming health for both of them, which I know people are always kind of quick to point out that they might not stay healthy because people, for some reason, are really concerned about health for skinny people. But assuming health for both of them, Victor's going to probably play more minutes. He's going to have the ball in his hands more. He's going to be relied upon to score more than Chet Holmgren because Oklahoma City has a really good team around Chet. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the best 5 players in the NBA. Josh Giddey is a phenomenal point guard, distributor, facilitator. Jalen Williams, rookie out of Santa Clara last year, looks excellent. Those 3 guys plus Chet is a really, really good team. And the pressure is going to be off of Chet to contribute in a super huge way. He's going to probably average double-digit points. He's probably going to average 6 or 7 rebounds. He's going to be a legitimate rim protector. He's going to be a very efficient scorer. I suspect his efficiency numbers will be better than Victor's because he won't be taking as many shots. But he probably won't score as many points as Wembanyama. He might not even score as many points as Scoot Henderson because Scoot's going to have the ball in his hands a bunch for the Portland Trailblazers because they're not trying to win basketball games. So they're going to let the 19-year-old rookie just go and do his thing. I'm excited to see it. It's going to be fun, but it does lean to a situation where Chet Holmgren probably won't have the numbers to be the Rookie of the Year. But I think at the end of the year, there will be a very strong argument that Chet Holmgren was the most valuable rookie to his team. He was the most efficient rookie, maybe even the most productive rookie. The raw stats, I suspect, won't be there. But on a team that I think is going to contend not only to be just a playoff team in the Western Conference, but potentially a top 5 team. I think Oklahoma City is that good. Their bench depth is a bit questionable, but I think Chet's going to be a very high-level starter for a playoff team. And I don't think that's going to be true for either Wembanyama or Scoot. Does that make Chet the Rookie of the Year? Honestly, probably not. It probably hurts his odds in some ways, but I think we're going to see Chet be the kind, and I say role player, and I know some people kind of get rankled when they hear the phrase role player because they think of it negatively, but I think most players are role players. The few players who aren't role players are like the absolute superstars, the Giannis Antetokounmpos, Nikola Jokic's, whatever. Chet is a high level role player as a low post scorer, as a stretch 5, as a shot blocker, rim protector. And I think he's going to play that role as well as anybody in the league. I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited to watch his rookie year develop. There will be debates about Victor versus Chet, Victor versus Scoot, Chet versus Scoot, whatever it may be. I think those guys will have bigger numbers, but I'm not sure anybody will be more valuable to their team than Chet Holmgren out of this rookie class. That's going to wrap us up for today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. We're going to be back on Monday. No show on Friday. I'll be out of town with family, but we'll be back on Monday with Mailbag. We'll be back later in the week with more of our player preview series and continue to keep you updated on recruiting updates and various other things, celebrity comedians coming to campus, whatever it may be that's happening in Spokane, we'll be talking about here on Locked On Zags. So make sure you make the show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and check us out on YouTube as well. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, as always, go Zags.